Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Welcome to another edition of Indie Beacon Radio. My name is Alan Bourgeois, your host and also sometimes your producer. I have with us today a lady who's written a lot of books about marketing and writing for authors. Her name is Barb Drozdowich. Drozdowich, I'm sorry.
No worries.
So welcome, Barb. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So the first question I've got to ask, for you, what is the term, and please help others understand what technology expert for authors is?
I started my career, clearly just a few years ago, teaching science at the college and university level. And when I moved to the other side of the country, I couldn't teach at the college level and got a job running the technical training department of a bank. Then I decided to start a family and didn't really want to go back to work, but I was looking for something to do. I was a little bit bored during nap time, so I started a blog. So what I found out really quickly is that my background in teaching technology gives me sort of a heads up on the vast majority of bloggers and authors, because what comes naturally to me is something that other people struggle with. So it just sort of morphed into a career. So I essentially serve as a technical trainer to authors. So I explain how to operate a blog, how to manage social media, how to use all the various tools that we use to post to various things. I explain how to publish literally. So, go to the KDP portal and how do you manipulate all of these various different bits and pieces of information. So I don't teach the craft of writing, and God help me, I can't edit worth my soul. And dialogue, not so much. But explain technology, I'm experienced in that, and I'm pretty good at it, I like to think. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah, so let's clarify. When you say explain, you're saying explain on a layman's term, everyday usage.
Yes. I take all of the technology words out and I may add them back in after they have been explained. But one of the things that I notice really quickly is that these words are often used as weapons. Especially in the author sphere, we have so many words that don't really exist in normal English. And they're used. I mean, just simply something like KDP Select. So instead of saying KDP Select, some people will say, oh, my books are in Select. Okay, that's not helpful to a beginner, right? Because you aren't going to find Select anywhere. You'll find KDP Select. And that sort of thing. So what I try and do is take all of the words out, and I'll use the green button or the thingamabob up in the right-hand corner, or, words like that. And then we gradually add the words back in as needed.
So would you, and please don't be offended by this, but would you say your books are kind of like the dummy for author type series?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not offended at all, because, I mean, quite honestly, the expert level of author doesn't need any help. Right? I mean, they may take some advanced level courses and do some, devil's advocate type of strategy type of work. But where the help is needed is the beginner authors coming in. They've got a manuscript in hand. They've spent 10 years on it, and it's their pride and joy. Now what? And those are the authors that need the most help, and I think that in many cases are the ones that are almost bullied, right? You get the younger group that have grown up with websites and Instagram and Snapchat and whatever else, talking a different language than perhaps the older authors who didn't have that in their life growing up. And it's very intimidating. So I like to deal with the authors. The way I put it is, if you can find the on button for your computer, then that's all you really need, and I'll take you from that point.
Now, you have 20 books, all wide range, and then really a lot about the marketing aspect. Do you teach individual classes?
I do. I have a series of online courses, and I do quite a bit of in-person work as well. And in-person in terms of standing in front of a group, in a workshop room, or one-on-one training as well. I do quite a bit of it.
Okay. And for your books, did you go self-publish or were you traditionally published?
I did both. So the very first book that I published was called How to Work with Book Bloggers, or an author's guide to how to work with book bloggers. And it was self-published mainly because I just wanted to get the information out there. I wanted to learn this self-publishing process. Like to me, it was a technical skill I wanted to learn. And then I learned it. I did a second book, and then I was headhunted by a small publishing firm. And then the next 3 books came out. So the first 2 were republished, and then the next 3 came out from the small pub, and then they closed their doors. And then I got, so then I got my rights back, I republished, and then one thing I found out really quickly is that most of the information that I talk about goes out of date in months.
If not days.
And so the average publishing firm can't edit fast enough for me. So, a prime example, I did a book on newsletters and mailing lists a 1.75 years ago. In the first year that it was live, I had to edit the section on MailChimp 7 times.
That sounds about right.
So, right, could I find a small pub? Oh, probably, but it would probably just drive me as crazy as the previous one did. So I was actually, it was sad for the company, but I was happy for myself to take back my rights and self-publish because I didn't have to worry about the time lag, which was clearly a problem.
Right. And small publishers as well as traditional, you always have that issue where you
Yes.
don't have much with you. So that brings up the question, are your books available only as an ebook, or are they also available as paper?
It depends on the book. The books that are over 100 pages are available in ebook version and paper. The ones under 100, there's I think 3 of them are ebook only, simply because they don't really look nice. As a paperback, you don't really get a nice spine. The books are available everywhere they can be available. So they're on Amazon, clearly, but they're also available through various distributors in a variety of different retailers, and they're available for purchase by bookstores. And they're on the Ingram list and that sort of thing. So they're available everywhere that they can be available.
So did you go through KDP Select to print, or did you use Ingram Sparks?
Both. When I first started, of course, it was CreateSpace to do paperbacks. That has morphed into KDP Print, and so the books are available on Amazon through KDP Print, and the paperbacks are also available through Ingram, to all of the other booksellers and whatever else. So they're available through both.
Great. And that's good for you because now you have the experience of doing both of them, so you can be better prepared to train people in that aspect.
And they're different. Like they have different requirements, and they have, infinitesimally different sizes. And it is good. It is a good experience to go through both. I agree.
Of the 20 books you have, which one would you say is your most popular one?
Interestingly enough, it's the very first one that I published, The Author's Guide to Working with Book Bloggers. So what I did early on is I did a survey of book bloggers to find out how book bloggers were interacting with authors and what advice they could give. I redid that survey, have redone that survey several times since, and updated the book. So it's based on real information and real data from real book bloggers. So I have a website that lists book bloggers that sort of is, I guess, a companion to that, which lists a huge number of book bloggers that submit their blog to be listed, and that website is coming out in ebook version in a few weeks. It's just going through edits right now because people didn't like the website format. They got frustrated going through page and page and page and page of a website. So trying to respond to concerns.
I understand. You have, as you just mentioned, the Author's Guide to Working with Book Bloggers.
Yeah.
But you also have then the Bloggers for Authors and the Bloggers for Authors workbook. So how do those three differ?
I have two workbook versions. I taught several courses in person, and what I was asked for repetitively was the information with the ability to write answers or to keep thoughts with the particular information. So the Authors Online Presence and Blogging for Authors both have a handbook version. It has lines put in it, so the page count is higher. And people seem to appreciate having the ability to journal their thoughts as they go through, and then everything is kept together.
Great. We have just about a minute and a half left.
Okay.
So what is your second best, other than the Bloggers, what would you say is your next best seller?
My next bestseller is How to Publish a Book. I have two versions of that book. I have what I consider my international version and my version directed at Canadians. I'm Canadian, and so one of the things I realized again through giving talks is that Canadians have a lot of misunderstandings about what is available for Canadian authors. So I wrote the Canadian version first and then decided to remove the Canadianisms and add in the if you live in France and if you live in South Africa and whatever else. I mean, everybody gets ISBNs from a different source, for example. There was a lot of sources out there for self-publishing information for Americans, but the information that is applicable for Americans is not applicable, for example, for somebody from France. So I wanted to create a more robust source of information, and I don't talk in platitudes. I talk in defining all of the words. What is a trim size? What's a margin? You know, where do you get your ISBN? What are the websites? What are the portals for publishing? I list all this stuff so it can be taken from the beginning to the end, and you end up with a self-published book.
That's a lot of information, definitely, that needs to be out there, and I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. We are at the end of the first section, so we're going to take a short break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to parent your parents? You have to laugh to keep from crying How to Parent Your Parents is a must-read book full of antidotes and practical advice to help parenting your parents. Author Charlotte Kenyon provides insights to help prepare anyone facing the challenges of caring for elderly parents. Check out our website at www.howtoparentyourparents.net.
What would you do if you found out everyone on the town council were thieves and murderers? That's what happened in Bandera, Texas in 1873. John Cruder was the marshal, yet he needed to operate outside the law in order to balance the scales of justice. He is the Midnight Marauder. You can find his books on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com in paperback, digital, and audio. I'm Roy Clinton, and I hope you'll read The Midnight Marauder.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Welcome back. This is your host, B. Alan Bourgeois. You are listening or watching Indie Beacon Radio, and we do appreciate you being here. I have Barb, and I'm not going to even try to say the last name, and I'm so bad with it, so I'll let you say it.
It's Drozdowich.
Drozdowich. Okay. So we have been talking about your books. We've covered the blogging ones. We've covered how to publish, but you have a lot of other things. You have things about newsletters, toolkits, referencing mailing lists, Goodreads. Out of all of the work that you've been doing, I'm curious, have you surveyed authors to see what they need the most of?
Yeah, pretty much every book that I created and then published was based on issues that I was seeing in my one-on-one dealings with authors. And I have quite a bit of interaction with authors in a variety of different fashions. In person, in some of the local workshops that I give here. I also run the book blogger list, as I was mentioning before, which is a list of book reviewers and book bloggers. I get probably one contact note a day, usually more, with questions regarding a variety of different topics. The site's been in operation for 6 years, so I fielded just over 2,000 notes from that website alone. A lot of repeats. I see a lot of the same thing over and over again. And so yes, I mean, the short answer, I guess, is yes. All of them are based on requests. And quite honestly, you can imagine dealing with that number of books. Every time I publish another book, I say, that's it, we're done. I'm not doing this again.
No.
No. Yeah, and I've got 2 more in edits right now. And of course, I have recently said, that's it. I'm not doing this again. It's too much. I'm done, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I've been doing this now for 9 years, so I understand all of that. We've been working with authors, so it constantly is changing in the publishing world as well.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you have buyouts of corporations or publishers or the way things are changed up, it's constantly changing. So it is a challenge.
It is.
You mentioned you have 2 books that are in edits. What are they?
The website that I've had for 6 years, the book blogger list, which is a database of in excess of 4,000 book bloggers and book reviewers. One of the requests I've gotten over and over again, I mean, I can't even count the number of times, is I don't want a website version of this list. I want a book version of this list. And so I have finally created a book version of the list, and it's in edit. So it'll only be coming out an ebook version because it is somewhere in the range of 3,600 pages.
Ouch.
So all of the book bloggers are sorted by genre of interest, and so each chapter lists the book bloggers that are, you know, interested in thrillers, interested in historical romance, et cetera, et cetera. And the other book that I have coming out isn't really titled yet, but I was asked to do a course for a chapter of RWA a couple of months ago that was titled Website Tips and Tricks. The instructor had gotten sick and had dropped out, and somebody asked me if I could fill in with 2 days' notice. And I'm like, oh, I think so. And so what I did is I made up the curriculum as I went, and you know, just essentially I was filling in for the instructor, but it just kind of blew up. It was this, I didn't know that. You know, how come nobody told me this? And what I tried to do is create a course on websites that wasn't about the platform, but was about the content and what you need to understand about the behind the scenes in common language. So, you know, I don't throw words around, but we talk about page loading time and why it's important and why do you care? And, you know, what should your domain name be? In these sorts of things, why should you care? So it is coming out in a course version, but my courses always seem to require a book because there's lots of people that don't like the course aspect. So it's coming out in a book. So it might be called Website Tips and Tricks. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out a name that actually explains what it talks about.
I understand.
Yeah.
Which actually brings up a good question. You were talking about terminology in the earlier part as well as just now. There is the terminology attraction marketing.
Mhm.
Anything related to that and how authors can use that?
Not specifically, but one of the things that I try and talk about in my books, authors seem to see readers as those people over there, right? They sort of forget that they're readers themselves, and most readers are pretty friendly. So they, because of this sort of, I don't know, self-imposed wall, they sort of forget skills that they learn in real life. So, for example, anybody that's worked in the corporate world understands how to network. In the old days, you had a Rolodex. Today, you've got a cell phone with contact lists. But you can take those skills, you know, who fixes your computer, who fixes your paycheck, and network online, network with readers, network with influential people, network with other authors, form groups that, you know, there's power in numbers. So I spend a lot of time in my books talking about networking in a variety of different ways. So try and get people to think outside of the box and sort of forget that, or not forget, try to look at Facebook as more than this is my book for sale, this is my book for sale, this is my book for sale, and think of it more of, this is my kitten. Do you want to be my friend? Do you like to read? I've read this, right? Look at it in a different way that is less salesy and more bringing people in.
So that brings up a good question, and we only have about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
With the decline of reading for pleasure, okay, has authors expressed ways to, how can we increase the readership again, or how can we get them off the technology-based reading to grab a physical book, or are any of those issues ever brought up to you?
Yeah, in a lot of cases, I mean, most of the local groups that I belong to, one of the things that I fight all the time is the fact that physical books are not necessarily something to focus on. In a lot of cases, stats tell us that they make up a very small percentage of sales numbers. Of course, that will differ across the genres. And it will also differ based on the point of the book. Like, I work with nonfiction authors or business people that create a book that is then their calling card. And so that's a different situation. But if you're talking about romance readers, for example, the vast majority of those sales are going to be ebook. And so trying to get people to ignore bookstores. Bookstore sales may happen, but focus on the world as opposed to focusing on their particular city, their particular neighborhood. And I disagree that reading is declining. I think that if we focus more on the available markets and sort of stop focusing, I mean, the US will always be the primary market. But there's some numbers coming out that I was at a conference a couple of months ago about numbers coming out of China, numbers coming out of Russia, numbers coming out of India. There's huge English-speaking populations that are reading. They're not necessarily reading books. They're likely reading on a phone. I can't read on a phone, but God love you if you can. And right, so all of the available formats, and don't pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah, that's a toughie a lot of authors have and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is a perfect stopping point for us, and let our sponsors do their thing, and we'll be right back.
Hi, Brakefield and Berkey here, award-winning authors for the Techno Thrillers books, the Enigma book series. Technology, today's weapon of choice, the cyber good guys versus the cyber bad guys.
We invite you to join our website, theenigmaseries.com, where you will get sample chapters, sample audibles, book trailers, and you can sign up for our mailing list. The books are available in ebook, paperback, and Audible. Thank you.
National Authors Day is November 2nd, 2019 in Houston, Texas. Join us at Discovery Green as we celebrate being a published author and remind the world of the great books that writers constantly create for your enjoyment. You can register at authors.dearindy.org. Tom Gromes, father of market intelligence, writing business books that are a game changer. International author of nonfiction, has written the first and only books on the collapse of Russia and the first and only book on market intelligence. Check them out at mkintel.org. That's mkintel.org, mkintel.org.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. This is your host, Alan Bourgeois. We hope you are enjoying the show. And we have Barb with us, who has a very unique last name, which we're going to spell in just a moment. But before we do that, Barb, you have a website that, of course, has all these books available and access to either the paper or the ebook and stuff. But you also have a lot more on that website. So since your website is part of your name, or is your name, go ahead and spell it out for everybody.
I have two major websites. I've got an author website and a business website. So my author website is BarbDrozdowich.com. And my business website is Bakerview Consulting. So BAKERVIEW consulting.com. On bakerviewconsulting.com, I blog regularly. I have links to, I think, upwards of 60 YouTube videos that I've created. I have 6 different online courses. The blogs have all kinds of how-to videos, how-to instructions. Why do we do this? I post about once a week, and all of that information is available, and the vast majority of it is in common language.
Okay. And then on your personal, the author's website, your name, you have courses there as well as all the books and other information, correct?
Yeah. The blog is attached to my business website. I'm sort of one of these do as I tell you to do, not as I did, because I started the business website first and then decided to publish a book. It's like, oh, now I need something under my name. And yeah. So
Okay.
do as I say, not as I do.
And on both your websites, they can reach out to you on Facebook, Twitter, and all the regular social media.
All the various different, yeah.
Okay. With a new author who's getting ready to publish, what is the simplest word of advice that you can give them?
Treat publishing as you would hiring a service professional for your house. So if you need somebody to re-roof your house, you would use some common sense, you would ask a whole bunch of questions, you would get a variety of different quotes. Treat publishing the same way. There are various steps involved in publishing: editing, formatting, cover graphics. Find service professionals, ask questions, get references, get prices. All of this can be done, and it's really no different than hiring a roofer for your house or hiring a mechanic for your car, although my husband does the mechanic thing. But it can be dealt with, and like, any big job, just take one little step at a time, address one step at a time, and it's doable.
Okay. And you mentioned you're working on the 2 newest books. Do you have other book ideas in the back of your mind that you're thinking about?
Okay, so I've got 5 outlined, but of course we're not doing that again. I'm working on a couple of more advanced books, but I hesitate because, sometimes I question how much interest there will be on, like, me getting into the weeds of technology is somewhere I really like to be, but I'm not really sure if authors are all that interested in walking into the weeds with me, but I don't know. We'll see.
There's a small amount that are, I can tell you that from experience, but there's a lot that rather not.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, I thank you very much for being with us today, and we wish you the best of luck. We'll be looking forward to the next set of books coming out.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.